You're listening to the Sisterhood Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode. Today we have Charlotte, who has struggled with drug addictions, crystal meth, for 4 years. She is now 1,015 days clean. Woo! Charlotte now works as a life coach, supporting and helping other people overcome trauma, and is a true representation of how to turn your pain into power. Welcome to the show, babe. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Okay, so tell us how your journey started.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so as
Take
in
us
how the drug addiction started.
Yeah, take us back.
Okay, so I was living in Australia. I actually moved out there for a guy, and then I was engaged to this guy, and back then I was 29 years old, and I had never touched a drug in my entire life.
Wait,
So
you
I
look about
was-
23 now, so
Well,
what's
thank
going
you.
on?
So I was really naive towards it. Like I had never touched anything, didn't know anything about it at all. So I went through this breakup with my fiance and rebounded, classic,
As you do.
yeah, into a relationship with this guy who was like a highly functioning drug addict. So he was really into cocaine, and he was probably spending like £1,000 a weekend on it. Like he was just constant. But because I had no experience of drugs at all, I guess I just thought that was kind of normal.
Can I ask what he did for a job? What he did for work?
He was like a medical sales rep.
Okay.
So
Right.
selling medical devices to hospitals.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had like this high powered job.
Yes.
On the surface, like seemed quite together,
Mhm.
but underneath, not so much. And because I had no experience of drugs, I just thought, oh, that's just how people party. Like people who take drugs just party like that. And I guess because I was kind of grieving the relationship with my fiance, I just didn't know like how to deal with it. I started to really struggle like with depression, anxiety. Like I tried to commit suicide twice,
No.
and I just really started like self-medicating with the drugs because it was just there, and I'd never touched anything before. So to me it was like, oh my goodness, like this is just such an escape from this pain that I'm feeling. And because that relationship was really toxic as well, it was just like one thing led to another. I mean, I think people really throw around the term narcissist like a lot.
Yeah.
This guy was like the textbook of that.
Yeah.
And when you're going through something that's, emotionally painful, like a breakup, I mean, obviously, probably shouldn't have rebounded into a relationship so quickly, but I just had no support. And like my family was on the other side of the world, like most of my friends were as well. So he was kind of my support, but there was no support. And it was just, I'll just take drugs, just get wasted every weekend. Like that's just how you deal with stuff.
Yeah.
So then
Just an escape, isn't it, really? How you're
yeah.
feeling.
And like within the space of a year, it went from like taking cocaine on weekends to like smoking crystal meth. Not with him, but it was just like a really quick decline into
How
that.
did he take crystal meth too?
No.
So how did that happen then?
It was just through like meeting different people like on the
Okay.
scene and like hanging out with different people. So it was like at first it was like party, then started hanging out with the people who would like sell the coke, and then they were like doing crystal meth, and it was just like
Okay.
just falling like deeper and deeper like into that whole world.
In terms of the addiction, building an addiction, what were the risk factors you would say for anyone else who's going down that slope? What do you think the risk factors were that were putting you
Like
at high risk of developing an addiction? So you was going through a breakup initially.
yeah, really, really low
Which would have made you
self-esteem.
quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
As well.
I just had no self-esteem at all. Even that jumping into that relationship straight after a breakup with a fiance, it's like I did not know how to be alone. So I just defined myself like completely through my relationships. Didn't know how to be single, like had never been single, had literally been in a relationship back to back since I was 15 years old probably. And suddenly after that breakup I was like, who the fuck am I? Like I don't even know who I
Yeah.
am. I was like
Yes.
grasping like I don't know what like all the pain, who am I don't know. And then I just met this guy and I was like, yeah, just cling on to that. And just
Was she still working through this time?
yeah. So at the start I obviously like had my job, and then I lost my job probably about a year in just taking drugs. Like I think I had started smoking crystal meth, but like sporadically, maybe on weekends.
Did you lose your job because you couldn't cope, obviously, with the drug use?
Yeah, I mean, even to this day, I'm not 100% sure what really happened, but I remember when they let me go, my boss said to me, "Yeah, we're just not feeling it." Like that was literally the, the reaction.
What was you
So
doing?
I was kind
What
of
was you
like,
doing at the time?
so I was just working in admin as
Okay,
basically as a kind of PA, but for a whole team of people.
Mm.
So it was a bit weird. I don't know. I mean, obviously I was taking drugs here and there, so I probably did drop the ball, but I don't know. It was just strange, but in a way, it was
That's
a
a
weird.
weird way to let you go, though.
Mm.
To say,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Very
we're just not
unprofessional
feeling
as
it.
well.
Yeah.
I know.
Just to
"You're
add.
just not feeling it. Bye."
I was
Okay.
thinking like maybe if I hadn't been on the drugs, I would have been like, "Excuse me," like
Yeah.
what?
What
Because
would you
I
say?
was.
All right, then.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh yeah, like I'm really shit. I better go. So
Mm.
yeah, so I lost my job, but then because of that, I was like, oh my goodness, like I obviously need to pay rent, and I still have to live somehow. So I actually started cleaning houses, and then like really quickly found that there was this niche like in what I was doing, and I actually started a business like whilst I was a crystal meth addict, and ended up having 11 people working for me. So it
Oh,
was like a
wow.
really
Wow.
weird. That was the
A
beginning,
real
though.
functioning
Yeah.
addict.
At the
Yeah.
start, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then obviously that's not sustainable. Like you can't
Yeah.
be a drug addict and then have that.
Can
like,
Can
carry
I
on.
ask what does what does it feel like to be on crystal meth? For
Okay.
someone who's never taken it before,
Yeah.
how would you describe your experience on it?
It's like this feeling of complete satisfaction. Like you feel like that the feeling that you'd get like when you've just done something, like finished a puzzle or like complete something. You just feel like
Dopamine hit.
you just
Yeah.
feel like like you think you're pretty fucking good, but you're like like really satisfied,
Like
and
you
like
figured
the
out
whole
life.
world's like crumbling around you, and you're just like like this is fucking good. I'm killing it.
So, at what points would you take the crystal meth? Would it be like did it get completely throughout the day, or so how did that work, or was it in
It
the
kind of
evenings?
started like in the mornings. Well, first it was on
Mm.
weekends, then it
Mm.
was, and I moved in with this guy who, again, I was just so naive to it. I just honestly like didn't even realize really what was going on. So
Mm.
he was smoking like every day, all the time, but I didn't realize. So we would kind of do it on weekends, and then I guess slowly it was like once I started working for myself, that's when it went from weekends to like, oh, I'll just have some like Monday morning because I'm like, getting over the weekend. And then it was like progressively like every single day. And then it was also, oh my goodness, like now I'm doing this on my own, not just
Not
like,
just
Yeah,
in a
not a
party
social thing.
setting.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
recreational anymore.
yeah. And I remember like one of the things that was massive to my recovery and getting clean is that I've always been a massive journaler. So I was like journaling like all the time when I was on it. And I used to ask myself all the time, like, why am I doing this? What's going on? Like trying to work out the patterns behind everything that was happening. And the pattern that I realized with the addiction was like the trigger for it was loneliness. Like every time I felt alone, like even in that relationship with that guy, I'd felt so alone. Like I don't know if you've ever
I
experienced
know
that
what you
before.
mean by
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
it's like the most lonely type of loneliness when you're surrounded by people but you feel
Yeah,
alone.
make you feel empty.
Yeah. And so that was
You're trying to fill
the
that
trigger.
void, aren't you, as well? And I guess that's why
Exactly.
you was using to try to fill that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to rock bottom?
I'd say it was like 4 years.
Okay. And what sort of dark places did you go to with your addiction? How bad did it get?
So I was homeless for a while, like lived in my car. Um
How long did you do that for?
it wasn't actually that long, and again it's really weird. Like I'm a massive believer in the universe and like the power of something so much greater
So
than
we.
me.
Oh, so
Yeah.
we love a bit now.
We
We're
do
so
too.
for
Yeah,
babes.
tell us
We do.
more.
Tell us more.
So it's almost like I just had this, it was like such a like shit situation, but I was blessed at the same time that it was happening.
Yeah,
Someone
you
was
don't-
looking
yeah,
after her.
You
Yeah.
know you're gonna be alright.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I was like homeless technically for 2 years,
Wow.
Oh wow.
I lived in my car for 2 weeks. So you tell me like how it was just crazy. It was like every time I'd like meet someone and someone would just come into my life and be like, you can just live
Crash
with me,
here.
stay with me, crash here,
Yeah.
whatever. it was really weird. Like now when I look back on it, I'm just like, that is something that's like going on that's so much greater than me. And yeah.
Did you ever fall into like domestic abuse and stuff?
Yeah, so that was another thing I was going to
I was
say
just
is like,
about to ask
yeah,
that
the
Was
question.
she?
Yes,
Great
it's something
man.
similar. A great man single life.
yeah,
Yeah.
the relationships that I had like throughout those 4 years with men were just like so fucked. And there was one guy in particular who was, I mean, all the relationships were so
Toxic, I can
abusive,
imagine,
toxic,
yeah.
like emotionally abusive. But then there was like one guy as well who's like physically abusive as well. And that was probably like, when I think back, that's something that I think of that was like such a rock bottom, because again, I'd never felt so alone. We were having this argument, and I was like screaming at him and like grabbed him to like shut him up, and he just like threw me down on the floor and like smacked me, and then he just walked over to me and just started kicking me whilst I was on the floor. And one of our friends, like this guy who I thought was my friend, was watching, and he literally just like stood there. And I've never in my life just felt so like lonely, abandoned, and just like lying there and just feeling.
Did you stay
so
with him or did you leave?
I left. Well, he actually ended up going, like, I left, and then he actually ended up going into prison. So then it was like, I can't, like,
You can't go
there's-
back to it
yeah, you
anyway.
can't go
Choice
back,
was
but-
made for you.
Yeah.
Outside your domestic situations, did you ever find that your drug taking led you to be in dangerous situations?
I mean, again, I feel like I was so lucky, because some
Yeah.
of the situations could have been so bad.
Yeah.
Like the people that I was hanging out with were like a lot of them were, so they have like a lot of bikie gang cultures in Australia. So it was like a lot of gangs, like obviously drug dealers, like criminals, like anything you can think of, like that's the kind of circles that you're moving in. And I was just so lucky that I was never around anything that happened. And like some of the things I used to do, I'm just like, again, like what the fuck was wrong with you? Like driving drugs around for people and like doing things that you just
I
think.
was going to say, how did you make the money to fund your habit? Obviously,
Yeah, that
because
was-
you lost your job and then
So I feel like that was, again, like just a really weird thing. And I was also quite naive to it, that I just didn't realize when I started hanging out with these people that a lot of them were drug dealers. So I just like didn't know any different than people literally just like giving me gear when I wanted it. I just
Right.
like and it sounds so stupid. I just didn't even know. And it was like 2 years in. And then I thought, oh my God, like this is the first time I've ever had to even like pay for something 2 years into the addiction. It was like, it's all just so like weird how it all happened.
yeah.
But yeah, the things like that, like doing like random shit for people, like driving drugs here and that. And I just think if I had been like pulled over, I 100% would be in prison. But like I just didn't even think about it. I was just like, yeah, like I'll just do that.
Did they expect you to like have sex with them and stuff for the job?
No,
Okay.
not really. But I guess like some of the guys, I was seeing them, so I guess maybe they did, but like not in that way that was like,
It wasn't like forced, like
No.
or anything like that. Yeah.
Would you say that you was being taken advantage of though?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like I think they could see me coming from a mile off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's really tough. So when you got to rock bottom, what did you do?
Once you hit rock bottom, the only way's up, right?
I mean, I felt like I pretty much just like gave up. Just before I got clean, I was living in pretty much like a crack house with that guy, the one that was physically abusive. So when he went to prison for 6 months, and then when he got out, we got back in touch, and then that was when I ended up like hanging out with him again, and we weren't seeing each other in like a relationship at all. But I think I was at that point where I was like, I literally have nowhere to go. Like there is nowhere for me to go. He is like the only person that I know that even has anywhere and is okay for me to come and stay. And that was like, I'm talking, there's like people shooting up in the kitchen in the mornings. Like it was just like rancid. Like when you think
As
of it.
grim as you could
Yeah.
imagine.
I
It
can
was that,
imagine.
yeah.
Did
Can-
you use
can I-
anything else like like heroin or?
I tried heroin and crack cocaine, but they were like never drugs that like took me. Yeah.
Can I just ask, what's your relationship like with your family?
Mhm.
And how was it through the addiction? And how did that
Um,
impact?
So I guess like growing up, I always kind of felt like not good enough in my family. I think I felt, and this as well is funny. Like now when I look back, I'm like, a lot of it was actually just my own perception of it rather than what it actually is. Because now I have a really good relationship with my family, but I
How many
think
of you are in your family? You've got brothers and sisters?
I've got one younger sister, and I did have an older sister, but she died when she was a baby. So,
Oh,
and that was
sorry to
actually,
hear that.
yeah, it was like it's like a tragedy, I guess, that hangs over the family as well, because she died in a car accident
Oh,
when she was
wow.
10 months old.
Oh,
And
sad.
my dad fell asleep driving. So I think that's something that like hangs over
Of
him.
course.
A lot of
Yeah.
guilt.
And that, and I
Yeah.
think because of that, he's always been very much like, everyone's here. Like, I don't want to let anyone in. Like, there's no
Yeah.
emotion. Like, he's like full just,
Dissociation.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so growing up, like, there wasn't really much like, I guess, like affection or like love or anything like that. It was
Emotionally unavailable.
And
100%.
sometimes people just don't know how to give you that if
Yeah.
they've got their own stuff going on, which isn't good for you. But you can, as a grown adult in a good state of mind now, you could probably reflect a lot back and understand. Do you do that? Do you reflect back on the things that led you to the path you was on?
Yeah, I think so. But it's really weird because when I look back at it, I'm like, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it was the worst thing that ever happened to me at the same time. And even my relationship, my family, like I live with my parents now because I've come back obviously to the UK, and my dad is almost like a different person. It's like he's healed like with me in a way.
Oh, that's so nice to
I know,
hear,
like
yeah.
he literally like comes and hugs me, and I'm just like,
Oh,
what?
that's good.
Oh,
Did they know
shout out,
about
Daddy.
all the drug taking? Did they know about what you've experienced and what you was going through and
Yeah,
stuff?
so 2 years in, I came back to the UK and I told them, and I was like, FYI, like I'm a drug addict. I was like, and I said to them, I was like, you like, if I ask you for money, like don't give it to me because you are literally like enabling the addiction. Like I
Wow.
can't. So
He was really like honest with them then.
Yeah.
yeah,
How did they take it?
they were obviously like freaking out because I'm on the other side of the world. They like don't know what to do. They got so much shit from like a lot of their friends who were like, you've got to go over there and like get her, like, you know, and they're like, we can't, she's a grown woman, we're not just gonna go in and like
You
pull her
can't
out.
save someone
Yeah.
that doesn't want to save themselves.
Exactly. And I think if they had tried to do that, I just would have,
You
I
have
would
to
have
do it
hated
when
them
you're
for it.
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
you cannot force someone to get
Yeah.
clean. You can't force someone to get clean.
That
No
must
way.
be the most difficult thing as a parent, having to watch your child make mistakes that you know that you could, that you could help them with, but you just have to let them learn that life lesson because they
But
are.
it's good that you have got family that love that you can go back to.
I know. It's something that I remember thinking, like when I came out, I was like, I'm so lucky that when I was done and like got clean, they just like welcomed me
Welcome
back with
with
open
open
arms.
arms. Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've gone through a dark night of the soul, and that doesn't have to just be one night. That can be quite a long time, actually. And it can happen multiple times. And it's like you have to keep breaking yourself apart until you've fixed yourself properly, and then you can heal and move on.
Yeah.
And that's it. You obviously very well now sat here. You look very healthy. You
Yes,
look
you
beaming.
do, yeah.
You look so young.
Your
She
skin looks
does.
good as
Yeah,
well.
like the classic
yeah.
meth addict look. No, like everyone's like, you used to smoke crystal meth.
Do
They're
you
like,
have
"You're right."
pictures though of like how you did look? Because
Yeah.
I'd like to if it was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
with you, could
yeah.
we use them?
Yeah.
To put
Yeah,
them
of
up
course.
just
Clip,
to
yeah, to
show
give a little
people visual
comparison.
like representation of how you
definitely-
can how low you can actually get.
I mean, I dropped down to 43 kilos. I was like so
what's that in
small.
stone?
6 stone, something
Oh,
like that. I
wow.
don't know. It was like little and
Was you really drawn in and stuff?
so gaunt. Like my face
How
was
did
just like,
just out of curiosity, what how is meth taken?
you smoke it.
Like
Well, I suppose you could like shoot it up as well, but I used to smoke it through like a glass pipe.
Like a
oh, okay,
bomb.
like crack then the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like crack? Is it like a rock like crack then?
It's
Is it
like
the same thing?
like a crystal.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
It's
not the
not
good
really
kind. Not
a
the good kind.
popular drug over here, is it?
It's big in
crystal
America though,
meth?
isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, so
like
it's big in
Breaking Bad-
Australia.
Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Is
in
it big in
Aus-
Australia then as well? Is that?
Yeah, but in Australia it's called ice, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we spoke about obviously the bottom. Let's speak a bit about your rise back to sobriety and
Yeah.
what that took for you to get there.
So this is where all the like weird stuff comes in. So I think I basically had a spiritual awakening as I was getting clean. And so I actually thought I was going crazy and losing my mind. So I had a friend who's like my best friend. He was the only person that I knew like in that circle he was kind of like, he used to take drugs and stuff, but he wasn't smoking ice and he hated ice, everything that it stood for. And he always was like my biggest cheerleader in like, you've got to get clean. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're so much better than this. And really sadly, he died at the end of 2019.
Sorry to
And
hear that.
yeah, it was really sad. And he had a heart attack, and it was like so unexpected. But I genuinely believe that like he helped me get clean from the other side, like 100%. And some of the things that happened were so crazy. So we went into lockdown in Melbourne, and they kept saying to us, like, you've got to stay home, you've got to stay home. And I was like, I don't want to stay home. Like, I literally live in a crack house. Like, there is nothing about this place that I want to be in. And I'm like locked in it. But in a way, it's like when you're in that situation, then you can't run anymore. Like, there's no more distractions, right? Like, you are literally like face to face with your life. And so I was walking through the city, and it was like the middle of the night. There was no one there, like not even one homeless person on the street. It was like completely deserted. And I walked past the church where MJ had had his funeral. And I was literally like crying, just like, oh my God, like I miss you so much, because he was my voice of reason, like the one person I could always talk to, be totally honest with, who was just like, come on, man, like you can fucking do it. Like,
such an amazing person.
He really was. Like, he had an absolute heart of gold, and he was just like such a good soul. And I was just in front of this church. I just like fell on my knees, and I was just like, oh, like I think I was just like crying out for him, like crying out for something, like just like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, I miss you so much. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck in this house. Like, I don't know what to do. And I left that and then walked back to where I was living. And I actually, even now, like when I tell this story, there's like a part of me that's like, yeah, but you were like on crystal meth, so maybe you maybe some of this, but no, like I'm gonna like stick with it. So I went to stopped at a petrol station, and I like walked in to the petrol station, like the shop, and there was a person standing like about a meter away from me, right? And he like looked up, and I swear to God, it was MJ. Like, it was like he had a hood on, and he looked up and he looked me dead in the eye. And the look was literally, what the fuck are you doing? Like, as in like, come on, like sort your shit out, right? And I was just like looking, and I ran because I was so scared. And I went back to the house.
He might have been tripping though, babe.
Might have been. But the thing is, right, this is weird as well. And this is when all these synchronicities started happening. So he used to have a freckle on the end of his nose, and that was the only thing that this person didn't have. And then I like was on my phone like scrolling through YouTube when I got back, obviously trying to like distract myself from what had been going on, and this video popped up, and it was like some random interview with Oprah and the Olsen twins, and they were talking about how, yeah, I used to have a freckle on my face, but now it's disappeared. And I was like, what?
Oh, I don't know though. I do kind of believe in things like this.
Right. And it felt like there was like more and more of these like weird things happening where I was like, he is literally trying to speak to me. Like, it felt like it was like these like messages like coming from everywhere, right? And I was just like, oh my God, this is so much. And then the next day I had this like thought that was like, go to a homeless shelter. And so I just went to this homeless shelter, and I was like, look, I'm living in this house. I was like, I'm pretty fucked. Like, I'm on drugs. I don't want to be anymore, but I don't know what to do. And they were like, we're really sorry, but because of COVID, we can't put you in a shelter. We have to put you in a 4-star hotel.
Oh.
And I was like,
all right then.
All right. That's okay if I'm twisting my arm there, babe.
So
I'll make a sacrifice.
So I thought someone was playing tricks on me, because I was like, that's not true. Like, that's not real. I was like, that is not real. But I'm like, okay. So I like went to this hotel, and I'm like sitting in this hotel, and then I think the restrictions must have like eased off a bit. So then I thought I was losing my mind, because there was all these like crazy synchronicities happening, and I just like didn't know what was going on. And I ended up going to like a crystal shop. And I was like, ran in, I was like, I think I've been cursed. I'm losing my mind. I was like, all these things are happening, rah, rah. And like, basically, I was just really ungrounded, like totally like out of my body, didn't know what was going on. And they were like, look, we don't think you've been cursed. Like, that's quite unlikely, but maybe you should go and get your cards read. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I went and got my cards read by this person. And again, like when I didn't say anything to them about like I was going through or anything. And the first thing she says, like I sit down, she's like, you lost a friend recently. I was like, she goes, he's here right now.
Oh wow.
And I was like, oh my God, like just looking at her, she goes, he's telling me to tell you that you don't need to be scared anymore. You just need to keep taking the next step. And he's got you every step of the way.
Oh, I love that.
And I was just like bawling. I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe it. And then the reading finished, and at the end of the reading, I said, I wasn't even planning on getting a reading done, but the lady downstairs told me to come up, and she's like, oh, was that Rachel or was that Akira? And I just was like, looked at her, because Akira was MJ's daughter's name.
Oh wow.
And that's a random name as well, right?
Yeah.
So there was just like
It is,
all these
yeah.
things
So
happening.
many
Yeah,
times.
so many things. And then he genuinely was. It was like from that moment on, it was like I could like hear his voice just like pushing me the whole time. Like, come on, man, you got this. Like every time I was like scared, it was just, come on, man, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And all these little things just kept happening and doors opening because I was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So because of COVID as well, the Australian government were like, hey, if you want, you can take some of your pension money out early. So I took 10 grand out of my pension and used that to get an apartment and get away from like all the shit.
Was that
And
back in the UK or
in
over
Australia?
there? Oh, okay. Over
So I
there.
still wasn't quite clean at this point. And then the turning point was like, I was just sitting in this apartment. And that's what I mean. Like sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, like the whole journey was actually just, the rock bottom was so shit where I'm just sitting there like fucking being beaten up like on the floor by this guy and like all these things that happened. But then the comeback was like this. It was like so quick. Like from that moment in front of the church to me like actually getting clean, it was like 3 months and I was in my own apartment just like chilling. Like it was so weird like how things like that can just unfold when you're on the right path.
Yeah. And you wasn't around any them people either. You was by yourself. That's
You
what
took
you
yourself
needed.
out of that
Yeah,
environment.
you took yourself
didn't
out of
you?
it.
Yeah.
So okay, so cool. The life coaching then. So how
Yeah.
did that come about? We'll go on to that.
So I think when I was getting clean, one of the things that I like really noticed when I was in that apartment by myself, there's like no other distractions around me, was like, wow, Charlotte, you are such a bitch to yourself. It was like all the time, like the voice in my head was like, you stupid fucking idiot. Like if I dropped something on the floor, it's like, you stupid fucking idiot, what are you doing? And I just suddenly became conscious like of this voice in my head that was so nasty. And I think that's like, obviously that had been there my whole life.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time we're not conscious of the way we talk to ourselves. And so because of that, I started to replace that with like, you know, stand up to it and just be like, actually, no, I'm not. Like, I'm actually fucking amazing and I'm doing well. I didn't believe, I did not believe what I was saying. Yeah. And
we talked about this the other day.
I didn't believe what I was saying. Like, I have even got a video of me like saying these almost like affirmations, but I didn't even know what affirmations were back then. Just saying to myself, like, yeah, I'm a really good daughter. And I'm so timid. Like, I can't even talk. Like, I'm just like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, I'm really good. And like, da-da.
Yeah.
But then, you know, it works. Like, it actually works. Like, reprogramming your mind.
Positive affirmations. I read them
really
every
works.
morning.
Yeah.
out
And
loud.
the way you talk to yourself really affects like who you are,
difference.
how you present yourself in the world, what you accept from other people as well, like the treatment, the toxic relationships, that bullshit. Like
It all starts within you.
yeah,
doesn't it?
exactly. And the
Yeah.
only reason you'd be in any relationship like that or any situation like that is if you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got low
Yeah.
self-esteem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that was like the turning point. So when I realized like how powerful our minds are,
Yeah.
obviously when I first got back to the UK, like I didn't go straight into that, but now I'm in such a good place where it's like I'm so ready to help people and able to have actually started that business up. And I just know how powerful your mind is.
So
How powerful it is. Yeah.
Are you a Dr. Joe Dispenza fan?
Yes.
Thought so.
What sort of people are you aiming to mentor? Is it other recovering addicts, or would it just be anybody with esteem issues or self-worth?
Yeah, so I was actually saying this to you the other day, wasn't I, when I spoke to you? And so I don't have a niche.
She is the niche.
Yeah, that's what I
babe.
said. I was like, I am the fucking niche.
I love it because
yourself.
look how your
Yeah.
confidence has grown.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's true. It
So
is.
that's amazing.
And I just think it's more about if people resonate with my story and me and my energy, they'll come to me because they'll know. I think you can see it when there's something in someone that you know can help you. Do you know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of
100%.
people that
You
can
feel it.
relate to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you're such a warm person. You've got good energy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah. So how does your is it a program? How does it work?
So I don't have a program yet, but I
Yeah.
am planning on launching one towards the end of the summer.
Mhm.
So at the moment it's just one-on-one online coaching.
Brilliant. So
Um,
if people need support, they can they DM you?
Yeah,
Could they?
yeah.
Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
DMs always open.
Yeah.
And yeah, always happy to have a chat with people. Even if people want to kind of sit down and just have a one-on-one chat like via Zoom or something, I'm happy to always do that with people as well, just to see if it's like actually a good fit. Because I think with coaching, you have to get on. It has to be a good fit.
Yeah,
you have to trust.
absolutely.
You have to trust the person who's coaching, and you have to resonate with them. You can't just like think, oh yeah, well because they did this, like I'll just go with them. It's like more personal than that. There has to actually be like a connection, and you have to feel safe and supported.
I
by
get
that
Have you
Yes.
thought
person.
about writing a book?
Do you know how many people ask me that? I did start writing one actually,
You
but then I
must
kind of
do
put it
it.
on the back burner for a bit.
Oh, you must do it. It would be an amazing. I would read it.
Would you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or make a documentary, make a film.
Absolutely.
Go back to Australia and like show
Yeah, can you
where
imagine though?
everything-
Like,
Yeah,
it'd be
it's
powerful.
true.
You are very
Yeah.
inspirational.
Yeah.
You're
Oh,
very,
thank
honestly,
you.
like there's going to be girls out there that probably have a little bit of a drug habit at the moment. So what would you say to them, to anyone, just to close, who is using drugs infrequently before they get to that addiction point? What would you say?
So before I started using drugs, I was a massive binge drinker. That was my thing. So the habits were always there.
Yeah.
And I would just say to anyone that feels like they are using drugs as an escape, because you know in your heart, like I knew the whole time. I was like, yeah, I'm going down, like I know the path I'm going down, but I just didn't care. Reach out. Like, even if it's just someone listening to this and they're hearing me and they resonate with what we're saying, like they know they're going down that path, but they're not quite at the bottom. It's like just something that happens here and there. Reach out, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Not everyone has a happy kind of ending like you as well. There's so many people that end up dying, don't they? Let's be real.
Yeah, it's true.
The overdose. So it's important you reach out definitely and get that support. Yeah.
And where can people find you? What's your Instagrams? Let them know where to
Instagram
find
is
you.
I am Charlotte Jackson.
Okay, do you have a website?
I do. Charlotte-Jackson. I think it's .com actually.
We'll link
plug it.
We'll
We'll
plug it.
plug
Don't
it.
worry.
And also we'll
Yeah.
add some support. We'll add some
Yeah.
links for
Yeah.
Some
support
drug,
for
some
anyone.
drug and alcohol
Drug,
services
alcohol,
as well.
Because
Alcohol
you just never think,
Anonymous,
like you
Narcs
just
Anonymous.
wouldn't have thought that the girl that I was, like when I went through the breakup, that like even my parents said it took them so long to realize like that's what was going on, because they knew something was wrong with me, but they were like, there is no way Charlotte would touch drugs. Charlotte hates drugs. Like I did. I hated drugs. I was like, that's disgusting. Like I would never.
You're trying to
And then it
suppress all
happened.
those emotions, isn't it?
And so you just never know. It's like if you've got like low self-esteem and you're like doing things like that on weekends, like having a drink like every time you're a bit upset or whatever, or
Just quickly, what can people do instead of using, to build their confidence and self-esteem? What other things can people do? We said about the positive affirmations.
yeah, positive affirmations.
Meditation.
Is actually so important, and it's such a weird one because it's like you pretty much are just sitting there with yourself in silence, but it's actually really powerful. Really just like getting to know who you are. Journaling is a really good one for that, because it helps you become so much more self-aware. You get to kind of like be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, what you're going through, and also like to know that it's actually okay to struggle. Like it's a human thing. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be happy all the time. You don't have to be strong all the time. Like you're allowed to go through shit. And I think that was probably part of the thing for me as well, was like I didn't want anyone to know that I was
Quite
struggling.
in denial, I guess, probably at first as well. You've got to sit with yourself and say, do you know what? I have got a problem.
Yeah.
And I need to work on myself. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's really hard
But
to
you've
do.
done it. You've overcome it. We're all proud of you.
And
so
so,
beautiful.
and thank you for coming today and
Thank you so much.
sharing
Thank
your
you for having
story.
me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget
guys.
to like, comment, share, and subscribe,
Pretty
and
please.
follow our beautiful Charlotte over here as well. And we'll put all the links in the bio description below.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.